Welcome to Courtney on Health with heard on MalcolmPresents.com, streaming a new streaming network
Is
that
it that
produces its
new,
own
Malcolm?
shows. It's
And
new.
it's new. It's new and improved
It's-
every day.
But for the person who's listening to the show for the first time, it's new. Even though he could go to the archives or on demand.
Uh,
We have all the shows for the last 2 years. It's
okay,
new.
good to know. So I'm going to start off then, okay?
Yeah, and the question, as we talked before, you're definitely not stable. So if they say
Okay.
you're stable,
Okay. All right.
anyway,
That would that would that would
start.
be in a completely other context. But anyway, so hi Courtney. She's like wondering what's with us today. Hi Malcolm. She's like, I had enough of this.
And
So
Courtney saying,
welcome.
"This is my time, my time."
Let's get to it. Welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast podcast series which focuses on one's overall well-being with tips on nutrition and exercise given by Courtney Gravenese, who's a registered dietitian with a Master of Science degree in nutrition and applied physiology. Courtney is an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro area and further out to places worldwide, I would say. And she will help guide you on a path to wellness and health. So, how does it feel? How does it feel like a complete unknown, like a Rolling Stone? The Bob Dylan tune, Like a Rolling Stone, came to mind when I was trying to figure out an intro into the topic for this episode, which is kidney stones. What we don't want is a traveling Rolling Stone, unless it's Mick Jagger at a concert hall near you, moving around like, well, Jagger. But on a serious note, kidney stones are painful and are more common than one would think. According to the National Kidney Foundation, more than 500,000 people each year go to emergency rooms for kidney stone problems. It is estimated that 1 in 10 people will have a kidney stone at some point in their lives, and I hope no. The prevalence of kidney stones in the United States increased from 3.8% in the late 70s to 8.8% in the late 2000s. The risk of kidney stones is about 11% in men and 9% in women. Other diseases such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity may increase the risk for kidney stones. Having a friend or two on a personal level who had kidney stones and wound up in the ER, I can say that the first thing they said was it was the most excruciating pain that you can have. And one of them had 2 children, and that would explain how excruciating it is. So we know that that's an issue. So Courtney's going to give us some important information on kidney stones, what to do, what to avoid, what to eat, what not to eat, and all sorts of good stuff. But as for Mick Jagger, I'm not sure if he ever had a kidney stone, but if he did, he would probably make it move by itself, as the force from him bouncing around on stage like a kid would probably pry it loose. And keep in mind, Mick is now 79. So how does that feel? I don't know. So Courtney, start.
Yes.
What is a kidney stone? Start giving us the info on
Yes,
this.
of course, of course. So I do have to say, luckily, let me find wood, everything all over the place. I have never experienced one, but I've had clients who have and friends who have, and not a single one would be dancing around like Mick Jagger, given the pain. It's
Right.
I've heard, just like you have, Max, it's excruciating. And if you think about the passing of a stone and how pain, it's a very tiny spot for a crystal or these small stones to be moving through. So all kidding aside, very, very painful. They are on the rise, and once again, we've got some explanation for it. But in other cases, not so much. So yeah, it is just like it sounds, a stone. It's crystal formation. They're hard deposits of minerals and acid salts that form inside the kidneys, which the body doesn't want. Body's smart. Body knows that these things should not be in the kidneys, and the body, of course, tries very hard to pass these through. So it's these. So if you think about it, it's the sticking together. These compounds stick together in very concentrated urine. And you're going to hear sort of, there's going to be an underlying theme of our time together today about concentrated urine and why we really don't want that for a multitude of reasons, but in particular to help with recurring kidney stones. So there are many types. The most common type that is seen is something called a calcium oxalate stone. There are other types like uric acid stones. So different things will drive how each of them are formed, but nonetheless, it is the most common one that is seen. So basically what that is a high amount of urinary calcium. And I'm going to emphasize that because there's a difference in terms of urinary calcium versus calcium that you eat or take in a supplement form that's absorbed intestinally. Big difference. Okay, so right now we're talking about urinary calcium. So what's your body is just pushing out waste, lots of calcium in the urine, combined with a plant compound called oxalates. You may or may not have heard of them. So it's not some weird chemical that we eat in processed food. It exists naturally in many plant foods, and some foods higher than others. So causes of it, generally in a broad sense, this big umbrella term, it's too much waste in too little liquid in the urine, and your body just doesn't know, how to handle that. As smart as our bodies are, remember these are very firm stones, crystals. So there are very few dietary things you can do once you have them to break them down so that they can be passed more easily, unfortunately. So what we're going to focus on is mostly for those individuals who have suffered recurring stones, kidney stones. And what we do know is that there does seem to be a prevalence of, once you've had one, unless you sort of correct the behavior, lifestyle habit, what you're drinking, what you're eating, you may be prone to getting these again.
Wow. There's a lot to go through in that. I know calcium oxalate, uric acid you mentioned, and it's so hard to figure, where dietarily it might be coming from, where hereditarily it might be coming from, and what medically it might be coming from. You could
Sure.
be taking certain medications that
Absolutely
cause stuff like this.
Yeah, were
So
they?
what?
I know for a while they were doing to break up the stones. They were doing like sonar.
And yeah, lithotripsy. It's shock
Yeah.
waves. So I would have to speak with a kidney specialist, a nephrologist, or a trauma, an ER doc to find out for sure what when they see somebody coming in, with these stones. It used to be that I think the lithotripsy was done much more frequently, but I seem to recall reading that they're doing that less and less. So unfortunately, that means for the patient a rather uncomfortable block of time. So, what if it's painful in the kidneys? It's painful on the pathway until it gets to the bladder. In the bladder, it's a little less painful, but from the bladder to excretion is a very painful process. So I don't know the circumstances under which they will do the shock waves versus letting it pass on its own. It could very well be simply size. Like they might be, they look at the size of it and say, this is just impossible. It's too painful. So that might be part of it, but I'd have to confirm that by speaking with, with somebody who's really in the know. But that is one of the ways to break it up. But from a dietary fluid consumption perspective, once you have them, unfortunately, it's just time to help them pass. That's not to say your healthcare provider can't help you with things, but from a dietary fluid perspective,
how would that even work? Actually, I mean, to get something that you're taking in your diet to move it. I mean, I keep thinking of Mick Jagger jumping around, jumping up and down. That's not going to help. But
and you guys know. I think foods, healthy foods, things that we drink can do many things. This ain't one of them.
There you go. You heard it. It's not one of them.
Not one of them. So, so we know at the top of the causes is poor fluid intake and dehydration. So we said that umbrella term, too much waste, too highly concentrated urine, just not a great combination for your body. We know that high protein intake. So I remember when high protein diets were first hitting sort of the scene of diets, fad diets or
That was the
otherwise.
Atkins, right? Atkins was
There
a
was
high
a
protein.
big
It is.
spike. So high protein intake, the correlation here is twofold. So with regard to our calcium oxalate stones, with a large uptick in protein, we're going to see a decrease in something called the urinary citrate. Now, citrate is a chemical in the urine that actually is helpful. It actually decreases stone formation. So you don't want anything decreasing that. And unfortunately, very elevated protein intake can do that. The other type, we mentioned that one other type of stone that there is called a uric acid stone. And we know that very high protein diets can lead to increase in uric acid, which then can result in an increase in uric acid stones.
Can we take more citrate to so the body wouldn't form the stones?
So there are studies, more and more studies coming out, in particular about magnesium citrate, but only as it relates to calcium oxalate stones. So you really need to know what kind of stone you're working with if you suffer from these, and you need to see, you got to speak to your healthcare provider. They can do blood tests. They can do a 24-hour urine analysis to see what's going on. If you've passed one before and you were actually able to catch it, they can tell a lot by the stone that you've passed. So you need to know what you're working with first before you can apply some of these treatments that may be helpful. And you're right, Malcolm, citrate being one of them, magnesium citrate is the combination magnesium plus citrate together that may be helpful in preventing the recurrence of stones. So we talked about protein intake, high sodium intake. So sodium, again, is salt in the diet. High amounts of oxalates, and we're going to talk about those in a second, a more detailed list. An increase in not just specifically sugar, so high sugar intake, but in particular high fructose corn syrup. So once again, with an elevation in sugar, high fructose corn syrup, either one, there's going to be an increase in urinary calcium, and it alters the pH. So all of these things, your body is smart, but it likes a certain homeostasis. It likes a certain steady state. And when you thrust large amounts of the sugars and high fructose corn syrup into the mix, it alters that relationship. In particular, we know that sodas, not only because of their sugar intake, but because of their phosphoric acid in content, is going to be problematic for the formation of stones as well. And oftentimes, if I'm working with a client, it might be like, okay, well, that's great because I have Diet Cola. You've taken out the sugar out of that equation, but you have not taken out the phosphoric acid out of that equation. So you've only knocked down half of the harm when it comes to soda intake.
But artificial sweeteners are also, they impair kidney function. And so if you're getting a Diet Coke, I mean, it's like a double whammy, I think. I mean, in a high fructose corn syrup, it used to have just the sodas used to have sugar and real sugar. And now they have high fructose corn syrup, and people were craving Coke from Mexico, Coke and Pepsi from Mexico that had sugar.
Real sugar.
Right, exactly. So you would, you go, hey, this is the real deal. It looks like an old nickel bottle and there's sugar in it, but either way,
they still crave Coke from Mexico and Colombia.
Yeah, because it's there's something about that original formula. But anyway, back to there's a lot of different things.
I'm not talking, if you're somebody who's experienced kidney stones and you drink an occasional soda, and by occasional I do mean really every once in a while, like every few weeks, that's not the levels that are problematic, really. I mean, 0 would be best, but I'm also appreciative that people like their stuff. So I'm aware of that. But so this is what we know about the data. Another interesting piece of information that we have is specifically about, now we're not talking about vitamin C intake from the diet. This is the research suggested specifically from high supplementation, high vitamin C from a supplement. the study showed that 1,000 milligrams or above seemed to worsen the formation of calcium stones. So what the belief is that, okay, if you've got that high vitamin C is going to increase the amount of oxalate formation, urinary oxalate formation. So again, no worries about vitamin C in the diet. Remember, when you're talking about our intake should, the minimum should be about 90 milligrams of vitamin C a day. Eat your fruits and veg. Certainly there's no problem with that. The research was very clear in that it was supplementation, 1,000 milligrams or above. So think that Linus Pauling amount of vitamin C that may worsen the formation.
A lot of people during the pandemic were, they were looking online with taking like vitamin C, vitamin D, all of it, and they were taking levels over 1,000. I mean, it was like, you got to take 1,200 milligrams. Like, are you a doctor? It's like,
right.
And they're putting those all over online.
So, and what was the response? So typically the response that I've heard, over the years is, well, it's water soluble. We'll pee it out.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what I heard, that if you overtake vitamin C, you just pee it out.
Right. Well, so much for that thought.
Or you form kidney stones.
What's that?
Yeah.
You pee it out, or you form kidney stones.
Yeah, we don't want either of that, but
yeah. So those oxalates. So again, I just want to repeat. So this is these oxalates that we're going to talk about. If you are not experiencing any issues with kidney stones, you don't need to necessarily avoid these foods that we're talking about and beverages that we're talking about. This is really for the individual who is getting them, can't seem to crack the code on keeping them away, and if you know specifically that they're related to these, sort of, calcium oxalate stone formation. So things like chocolate. Things like nuts and seeds. So that's why I wanted to say that first, because people might be listening and be like, you just told me like a month ago that I should be eating dark chocolate, nuts and seeds,
right,
all this.
Exactly.
So very small subset. But anyway, high oxalates, chocolate, nuts and seeds, beets, spinach, rhubarb.
Spinach.
Tea, not herb tea. So I'm talking green tea, white tea, black tea, oolong, that category. So not herb tea. Levels of oxalate
tons of that a day.
Is very low. Soy milk. Most recently, I was reading about soy milk being higher than what you would want if you're somebody who's having recurring stones. Hopefully not that often. So it's been a while since I've worked with somebody who was getting stones on a recurring basis, but the more you think about this and the way we eat and very trendy foods, and I just want to put this out there for folks who are listening, who are suffering with these, be careful with the energy bars that are very popular right now. Typically the ones I got to be honest with you that I would typically recommend for most people, look for the ones with nuts and seeds. If you're a fan of chocolate, look for the ones with dark chocolate in it. But those energy bars with those compounds in it are not necessarily the greatest option for somebody who's getting, kidney stones, because you've got seeds, nuts, chocolate, all three of which are very high concentrated sources of oxalates.
Wow.
Same thing with the smoothie. If you're a smoothie king, right, and you like your spinach, your beets, your carrot, carrot juice that's in there, you got to be careful about just how many of these smoothies you're putting back on a weekly basis. If it's your default breakfast or snack every day and you have gotten kidney stones, I would probably suggest that you change the combination. So move from green to maybe red. I'm not saying you need to dump the smoothies entirely, but you need to make the shift over to those foods that are not necessarily going to be as high.
Yeah, but the question, does lifestyle, can that change things? Like if you're active, if you do physical exercise, if you do running, if you do weights or whatever, wouldn't the body metabolize all these good things that you shouldn't eat?
I don't know
kidney stones?
The answer is I don't know if exercise affects oxalate absorption. I don't know that, but if you think, we know that obesity is one of the risk factors for developing stones. And if you kind of pull all those threads together and say, well, exercise is going to perhaps help with managing somebody who has, obesity. So it may be an indirect link there, but I don't know if exercise is going to have an impact on the way the body metabolizes oxalates. But we do know that fluid intake is very, very key, and not just, casually increasing fluid intake. It's almost prescriptive. And what I mean by that is if you go to the Kidney Foundation, you go to kidney specialists, it's around 96 ounces of total fluids a day. So I want you to think about, typically some of the references you'll hear for how much fluid we should have. Now, I'm not talking about an athlete right now. The average, our average people, you hear about take your weight in ounce and divide that in half. And then that number in ounces is what you should be consuming in fluids. The other one is the 8-ounce glasses, which brings you to about 64 ounces. So people struggle with even that. And now we're asking you to bring it up to 96 ounces a day. That may be a little bit more challenging. But the good news is, it's not just, it's not just water. If it's water is best. It's easy, right? We know, but you can help that out a little bit. You can certainly do seltzers if you don't find, the gas to be problematic to you. You can do dilute juice, very dilute juice. You can do herb teas. You can even do coffee now. Years ago, the mantra was, if you're drinking coffee, you have to back that coffee up because of the caffeine intake, and caffeine being a diuretic. You have to back that up with a cup of water in order to sort of, create equilibrium with the water losses from the coffee. Now they're saying, you know what? Coffee counts. Now, that doesn't mean you can have 7 cups of coffee all day long. It means I'm talking about 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day. That counts towards your that 96 ounces of your fluid intake. Fruits, vegetables, soups, salads, all of these things are going to contain fluid as well. So that too is going to count towards your 96 ounces. So that number is key. In terms of getting up to that level in order to keep things nice and dilute.
Yeah, that's when you hear that number, it's a shocker. But if you think about your coffee and tea and intake and your salads and fruits and veggies, and if that counts towards it, or soups, it's a good time for gazpacho. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there a particular?
Absolutely. What's your recipe?
Is there a particular age that they develop more kidney stones than other times in your life? Your teenagers, just adults, or elderly?
I don't know for sure. That would be interesting to find out. I'm just basing, again, I see kids, teenagers, and adults. I mean, and in my practice, again, I don't see many individuals who've had them, but it's been mostly in sort of middle age or postmenopausal women. So I think kids sometimes do a better job of drinking a little bit better. We know that there's a problem in the elderly because their thirst mechanism is greatly affected, and they just don't get thirsty. And if they're not thirsty, they're not likely to drink. So that's less of a problem in people who are younger. So that's part of it. Diet, they may be able to pay more attention to what they're eating. But so all of these things are going to affect, the formation. And then of course, again, I'm talking about prevention for somebody who has been getting these, but once you have them, you obviously it's going to be painful. You're going to work with your healthcare provider about what the best course of action for treating them is. But long term, what we know about kidney stones is that it may actually lead to osteoporosis, oddly enough. because it's secondary to there's this great dysregulation of calcium absorption when you keep getting, regular stones. So if you think about it, calcium lives in your bones and calcium lives in your blood. Your body that works very, very hard to keep a steady level of calcium in the blood. So what's happening with an individual who keeps getting kidney stones is your body's pulling from the bones, moving it out and moving it into the urine. So because of this formation, so it's over time that could lead to osteopenia and osteoporosis. So you would certainly want to, make sure that you do whatever you can to keep these from happening. Just like you mentioned, Malcolm, the magnesium citrate. It is very helpful with the calcium oxalate stones specifically. We know because of the magnesium content in a diet called the DASH diet, which we've spoken about before in our episodes here. It's very high in magnesium, and to be fair, so is the Mediterranean diet. And those diets specifically have been linked to lower incidence of developing kidney stones. So one more reason why both of those are great dietary patterns, dietary plans to embrace for a variety of reasons, but because they're so high in magnesium.
So
Really?
is that the
Good to
only
know.
way to get rid of kidney stones is through urination? Or are there any things that you could take that would, foods or medication that would break it up?
No, there's no food to be aware of. I want to make sure I'm not giving wrong information. If my memory serves me correctly, I believe, and again, you'd have to have a prescription for this. I believe it is potassium citrate that you would get, through a doctor, that can help. I don't know if it specifically helps break it down. It might, to help make it passing it a little bit easier. And then, like we said, the criteria that your doctor may use to decide whether to do the lithotripsy or not may be based on size or type of stone that it is.
Just to add a little levity in this, and I know stones are. I know people who've been through that and had to pee it out, and it's a horrible pain. But there's a Seinfeld show where Kramer has kidney stones. Yeah, and
I'm sure he goes
and
crazy.
they went to the circus.
Oh God.
And the sitting in the circus, and Kramer says, "Oh, I got to go to the bathroom." So he goes to the bathroom, and just as he goes to the bathroom, the announcer says, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, our tightrope walker is going to walk across, the auditorium without a net. So please be very quiet. No sounds, please."
Of course, he's
Kramer
screaming
going in and doing his thing, and then it goes back to the tightrope walker, and all of a sudden the arena is quiet, and all of a sudden it's this big yell. He's passing his stone. Anyway.
That show is one
So-
of the kookier shows out on the air, I got to admit. But we're all Seinfeld fans. So what else do we need to touch on this?
I'm just trying to think. I really think the biggest message to find ways, again, unless a friend of mine asks me for my nutritional and exercise advice, I don't dispense without. I try to not do that. But for my client base, one of the hardest struggles, they're fine with minimizing the high oxalates. They've got a handle on that. The biggest hurdle is getting that fluid intake up. So oftentimes, we're working together on, let's make some fluids a little bit more interesting for you to encourage drinking. And along the lines of the citrate, adding a little bit of citrus to your water or to your fluids is actually going to be beneficial. So what does that mean? Lemon juice, lime juice, splash of good lemonade, not the super, the stuff that's no lemon, just all sugar.
Cranberry has vitamin C also.
Tomato juice. So anything orange juice, anything that's going to have a higher amount of citrus content to it is going to be beneficial. So not only is it in terms of decreasing the formation of the stones, but it might make your beverage more palatable. And if it's more palatable, you're more likely to increase your intake. And again, whereas, regular tea is high in oxalate, you've got the whole other suite of herb teas that are available to you. And I know it's warmer weather now. You could do iced teas and sip those, throughout the day. Maybe squeeze a little fresh lemon in there, so you're combining the hydration with the lemon again. So whatever you can do to help make your beverages more palatable, to encourage that fluid intake closer to 96 ounces is going to be one of the best things you can do.
96 ounces is a lot, because I drink like
There is.
64 ounces and I'm pushing on that. But anyway, guys, our time is up.
All right.
Time is up. Oh
The
man.
time is up.
Wow.
Any
That's
final
quick.
words from Mick Jagger?
I don't know. You got to move like Jagger. You got to move like Jagger. Boy, I every time I see him, and even now he's bouncing around. It's just amazing. So, but anyway,
He must be taking something.
well, they have these infusions, and I'm thinking that he might get it. I think Tom Cruise gets it on. Honestly, I don't know how they look the way they look. And William Shatner, I mean, he went up in space at 90 years old.
90.
Look at him. There's not a wrinkle on his face. I don't know.
I don't know if that's infusion or Botox. I'm not sure.
No, they have these infusions. They get blood infusions.
And Mick and Bill, Tom, if you're listening to the show, please tell us.
Check out Courtney on Health.
Courtney on Health, and you can email me at malcolmpresents@gmail.com. Let us know your secrets, and if you're really good, we'll have you as a guest on the show.
Come on down.
Come on down. You wouldn't mind, Courtney, to sharing the mic?
No,
Absolutely
not
not.
with any of those. No,
Anyway, thank you very much.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, which is Courtney on Health, on Instagram and TikTok at CLG Wellness. Visit her website, CourtneyGravenese.com. For past shows, go to MalcolmPresents.com and theManyShadesOfGreen.com. This has been Courtney on Health, Smart Sound Nutrition, Strong Safe Fitness, and we'll catch you again next time.
And keep on drinking those liquids.
Keep on
Bye.
drinking those liquids. Okay.